And welcome back to Touchline Talk. As I said before the break, it's time for another edition of the Supporters Corner. This week, the guest is Calvin Mittra. Calvin writes for Royal Blue Mersey, which is SB Nation's website covering Everton. You can find all of their stuff at royalbluemersey.sbnation.com. Follow him on Twitter at rbmersey, Mersey. Gotta remember how to spell it the right way. But I wanted to find somebody, Everton, to talk about everything that's happened. It's a strange world we're living in, but Everton has been so good. I'm sold on them. I wanted to see if people who follow this team even more closely than I do are sold as well. What realistic expectations were coming into this season, why Everton have gotten off to such a good start, how much of an impact Carlo Ancelotti has had on this, all of those things. So here we go, another trip into the Supporters Corner. Thanks so much for joining me. Really appreciate you taking the time to be here.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
So I want to start with this. Very simply, if I told you that at the international break, Everton is sitting there atop the Premier League table, is that something you could have imagined? What is just sort of going through your head with what we've seen so far?
Oh man, no. I don't think anyone, and even with the transfer window we've had, I don't think anyone would have predicted we would be where we are right now. Again, we have just gotten so used to like slow starts, whether it's new managers, old managers, and so we just flying out of the blocks like we have, just such a welcome sight. We really, even with all the new signings we had, there was an expectation that it's going to take at least a couple of weeks, if not a couple of months, for them to settle in, start grinding out some results. But no, just come out playing this attacking, aggressive football. Love it. Absolutely love it.
And what were your personal expectations coming into the season? Because as you mentioned, a
Yeah.
very intriguing transfer window. You bring in a James Rodriguez. Obviously, there's reason for optimism, but this is also a bunch of new pieces you're trying to put together. Where was your head at? What did you think this team was capable of before you actually saw them put these performances together on the field?
So it was interesting. Again, we got a bunch of people in some key areas of the pitch, right? Clearly, towards the end of last season, Ancelotti could see that we had some pretty big gaps in the midfield. There was definitely some quality required there. What's interesting is with the three signings that he's brought in, and none of them, even James, right? For being as high profile a player as he is, it's not like he's coming off like two consecutive Champions League winning seasons or
Mm-hmm.
anything, right? It was clear he was unwanted at Real. We didn't know whether he was going to come in and take off, whether this was a big payday for him. Same thing with Alan and, to some extent, Dokore as well, right? They were definitely brought in to fit a need, and they've fit right in. I think that's been the best part, right? It's in the 1 or 2 weeks that they came in, Ancelotti was able to describe to them right away, hey, guys, this is where you go in. This is how you fit in with the rest of the team. Get out there and play. And they are. It's amazing. That's so even in my wildest dreams, and I think for a lot of the guys on Royal Blue Mersey, right? I think we had an anticipation that we would be within maybe 6 to 10. That's about where we see us usually ending up. So that's where I think the thinking was 6 to 10. If we can get a couple of long cup runs, if we could win a cup, that would be amazing. But even if we got to like at least Wembley or the quarterfinal, semifinal stages of any of the cups, it would be okay. This is positive. And then as we go into now next summer, let's now really, if we can be in Europe, that's makes us more attractive as a destination. Then let's talk about, all right, let's make a serious top six like charge.
You mentioned the midfield, and that's definitely something I want to talk about. It's what stood out to me as
Yeah.
well as somebody who obviously doesn't follow this team as closely as you do. Can you put into perspective just how much of an improvement? And as you mentioned, it's not just James, it's also your Allens and your Decuries that have come in and doing more of the dirty work. But can you put in perspective how much of an improvement you've seen from this midfield based on the past couple seasons?
So, Everton for the longest time, right? We've always gone with having a midfield destroyer kind of player with a midfield general partnered with him, right? So I think some of our happiest days were when we had Gareth Barry, even though he was pretty old at the time, with an Idrissa Gueye playing next to him, with Gueye being the tackling monster who chased every lost cause down, chased the opponents down, got the ball back, fed Barry to distribute. With Gueye leaving, that gap never really got filled. We did go out and get Jean-Philippe Gabin, who was supposed to fit that role, but with his injury issues, he was missed pretty sorely. To the extent where now we had like Tom Davies and Gylfi Sigurdsson as our starting choice midfielders last year. And again, there were entire games or sequences of games we went through with those two guys in the middle with like no tackles made, no interceptions, or maybe a handful of balls won in the middle. So the book was out on Everton. Yeah, absolutely. Run it right down the middle. They're not going to be able to do anything. And it was both ways. On defense, we struggled, and in attack as well, we became completely one-dimensional, right? So the only way for us to work was just hoof it up front, and maybe Dominic CalvertLewin could find Richarlison, and between the two of them, something could happen. So having a functional midfield with Alan, who's now, again, the Gueye replacement for us, long overdue, having Doucouré's energy, that box-to-box midfielder who's getting up there, coming back, helping defend, linking all that play, and then now James out wide, and James does have that tendency to cut in. But now that's not a weak point for us yet because, again, Doucouré's energy is great. He goes back out there, and between him and Seamus Coleman, they've got that right wing marshaled pretty well. So it's been impressive watching how quickly they've taken on what Ancelotti wants from them.
For sure. And on a broader scale, based on what we've seen across the league so far, does that make you put any more stock into how consistent and how impressive Everton have been, or more confident about what this team can do moving forward? Because we've seen Liverpool give up 7 goals. We've seen Manchester City struggle. United is a mess.
Yeah.
There's just no way to explain what's happening. And yet here's Everton consistent so far, week in and week out.
Yeah. So, I think for the folks who are like, hey, this is exactly like the year Leicester City won the Premier League, I think it's still early days, right? I think it's too soon to say that. I think when Leicester City did win the league, it was quite clear there was a drop-off in quality in a number of the bigger sides. But if you look at, say, the transfer window this summer, right, I think bar United, and then not counting City and Liverpool, considering they're already as loaded as they are, Chelsea loaded up on players, right? So did Spurs, and so did Arsenal, right? So I think it's too soon to say, yep, this is like a Leicester-like year, and anything could happen. I do expect some of the the traditional top 6 teams to maybe work themselves out and even themselves out. Again, for us, as Everton, as surprising as it is being at the top of the table, our fixture list hasn't been the most difficult, right? We played Tottenham to open the season, but after that, we played 3 teams who are right now in the bottom 10 of the league. So again, I think on a practical approach, right? I think we need to continue to just shut out all the noise that's going on around, shut out all that hoopla about being number 1. We need to go beat the teams we need to beat, right? So you've got 10 of the bottom half teams, right? If you look at that as 20 winnable games, 60 points, if we can get our 40 out of that, and then the remaining 10, right? Again, very conservative estimate, you pick up another 20 points, that's 60 points. 60 points usually gets you into the Champions League. So on a consistency basis, we just need to beat the teams that we should beat and then continue to be competitive against the other teams. And hey, end of the season, I don't know where we're going to go or how this is going to shake out, but I'm enjoying the ride.
And one of the people that you mentioned that's been so key to this so far is Dominic CalvertLewin. What have you seen in terms of his progress? He's just scoring goals for fun now. And what role do you think having somebody who's as technically gifted and creative as James is in there to sort of pair with Richarlison and give him these different creative forces to help set him up for success?
Yeah. So again, I think the growth of Dominic CalvertLewin it's quite the sight to behold, right? I think 2 years ago when he kind of broke into the first team, there was the thinking that, hey, his finishing's not that great. He's got to work on it. But I think just having, again, a manager like Carlo Ancelotti here has made such a big difference to him. I think he's really simplified the game for Dom. Again, Ancelotti loves to throw out the Pippo Inzaghi example and say, hey, Inzaghi was a great striker for me. I don't see why Calvert-Lewin can't be the same way. And one of the reasons why Pippo was as good as he was at his craft was he had great positional sense, and he didn't dilly-dally on the ball. He was known as, just a one-touch finishing striker. And Ancelotti is trying to get Dom to do a lot of those things as well, right? So again, Calvert-Lewin's work rate has never been in doubt. The man's a workhorse. He will go run up and down everywhere he needs to be. So with Ancelotti sort of fine-tuning that finishing ability there, just one-touch finish, don't dally on the ball, getting into all the right places. And then that getting into the right places piece, having someone like James who can distribute the ball with the way he can has really opened up the world for Dom, right? I think just yesterday we saw some heat maps where if you look at Calvert-Lewin's heat maps for the last 2 seasons, and it's most of the times he's out down the wings trying to win the ball and play off someone before he runs into the box. Whereas you look at his heat map for this season, it's this big yellow dot right at the penalty ball in the penalty circle, right? And that's what he's been told to do. Work on that area. Sure, go win the ball elsewhere, but you get back there. Let the creative forces, the Jameses and the Richarlisons, make chances for you. And the chances have been coming. He's been banging them in. I'm really happy to see that for him.
And you just talked about Ancelotti and the impact he's had on Calvert-Lewin. When he was hired, what were your expectations? Did you feel like he could get this team moving in this kind of direction? And it feels like this is very much a kind of team he wants, a team he believes can compete for a Champions League spot. Obviously, he's got this pedigree, but What role do you think he's played in this, and just how much of an impact has he had based on just what he's been able to do in a fairly short amount of time with a weird preseason and just weird circumstances?
So again, Ancelotti, right? Like you said, what a great pedigree, right? He's a manager who's been there, I think he did it all as a player, and then he went ahead and did it all over again as a manager. I'm going to raise my hand and say I was very skeptical, right? He seemed like a very high-profile signing. I think over the years we have gotten used to sort of blue-collar managers or up-and-coming managers. I don't think we've ever, at least not in my lifetime supporting Everton, ever had someone who is considered like one of the greatest managers in the world currently still coaching to come to Everton. So when he did, I was skeptical. I was like, is this like a last hurrah before he retires? What exactly were his I guess ambitions coming out here? But to his credit, he's absolutely embedded himself in the Everton way of life. I think as a fan base, he's embraced the fan base. He's made it very clear where he sees weaknesses, where he sees strengths. And again, it's so many times. We had a bunch of folks in like football journalism who were like, "Yeah, this is going to be his biggest challenge," and it might well be. Again, he's used to going to the biggest clubs in the world and having rosters of Jameses, not just the one James and Richarlison, right? So, I was skeptical. It took maybe about 3 months of watching him work with the current squad to see how he was. Again, I think another example that was brought up was I think one of the Premier League games this week, the first 3 Premier League games. I think 8 of the starting 11 were also in Marco Silva's starting 11 a year ago, right? So it's not that he's come in and brought in 10 new players and all of a sudden we're much better. That makes sense. I think just he's a manager and he's getting the best out of the players he has right now. Where he found the time to do it with COVID and with no preseason, I don't know. The guy's a wizard, but that's why we call him Carlo Fantastico. So, yeah.
Is there anything in particular, aside from just the results we've seen and the fact that Everton's there in first, that has surprised you or stood out above everything else so far, watching this team in these first couple games?
Uh, Again, I think apart from the surprise that we are up in first, right? We haven't met too much adversity in this season. I don't think we've been behind for too long in any of the games. And I think when Palace equalized, I think they seemed like it was going to be a bit of a shaky spell there for a bit. So, but even in that short time, I think the mindset seems to be changed. I think the mindset that's running through the team, there's a lot of self-belief, which definitely wasn't there towards the end of last season, and I don't think we've had that belief, at least with Marco Silva. I think under Marco Silva, we might have come from behind to win once, if that. Which then with Ancelotti, I think we overcame that in like his fourth or fifth game in charge. So I think just that willpower, the hey, we are winners, and I think it's that sort of unmentionable that you see in teams that win, is that no matter how negative it looks, how bad it is, how many players or goals down you are, there's always that belief that you're going to come back and you're going to win this game. And I think we're starting to see that in this Everton. It's incredible. We love it, and hopefully it continues.
I'm completely sold on this team already. My one question mark or caveat is, as you sort of alluded to, this is still a team that's primarily the team we've seen the past couple seasons, and it's not a deep team like a Manchester City or a Liverpool where you can sub a Diego Jota in for a Sadio Mane or something. How concerned are you about just being able to keep this up for 38 games? And do you think this team could sustain or withstand even a stretch where you get a Dominic CalvertLewin injury or James or something, and specifically because James hasn't played a full season in years.
Forever. Yeah.
Right. What's your concern level about the depth and just how reliant it seems like this team is going to be on a couple key players?
It is a big concern, right? I think to some level, whenever a team has a good season or does really well, there's a certain element of luck that comes with it. And I think we're going to need a pretty hefty dose of luck as far as injuries and fitness, and inevitably, like a loss of form was going to happen. The director of football, Marcel Brands, from day one when he came in 2 summers ago, his goal was to have a Premier League caliber starting 11 and one direct replacement who could play at that level for every position. Now, maybe 2 or 3 teams in the league can aspire to that kind of greatness. Mm-hmm. But I'd say at this point, we might have about 14 or 15 players who all, I think, are very clear about their roles in the team, and the backups know that they could be called in to play any time and, sort of hold the fort for 3, 4, 5 games as needed. Getting through this first stretch until this international break was critical because we were playing twice a week with the League Cup going on. Pretty much from here through till December, it's just 1 game a week for Everton. So again, I think the managing the fatigue and the injuries should be reasonable. So again, as long as we don't have any like big time injuries where someone's out for 2-3 months at a time, I don't see why we shouldn't be able to sustain this level of play and then the results that'll come with that.
I've got one more question I want to say for the end, but I'm also curious on your perspective. Of course, this is still early. There's a long way to go. But how has your view of what this team's ceiling can be and the potential of this group this season changed based on, again, the struggles that you've seen from the other title favorites and the fact that Everton has put 4 really solid performances together here to start the season?
Yeah. So again, I think from a ceiling perspective, right? I think Leicester City proved it, right, a couple of years ago that there is no ceiling. The ceiling is the Premier League title, right? So again, if other teams continue to drop points like they are, and Everton can continue to play at this consistent level, then absolutely the ceiling is the Premier League title, right? But I think on a more realistic perspective, I think we're for a long-term perspective as well. We definitely want to ensure we have done enough for European qualification. If we can win one of the cups, I think that's absolutely a bonus. The fan base deserves this. It's been very long. So I think if we were in week 38 right now and Everton were finishing the league in third place, would I be disappointed having known that we've had this conversation and Everton were leading the league at one point? Yeah, sure. But I think absolutely any fan right now would take, say, finishing third and winning the FA Cup. That would be absolutely a dream season. So, yeah.
And then finally, I didn't want to let you go without at least talking a little bit about the next game on the schedule once we get past this international break.
Oh
Merseyside
man.
derbies are always something special. Weird things have been happening recently. Can't imagine what it's going to look like this time. But what does this particular Merseyside derby mean with Liverpool coming off of that unbelievable defeat? Everton in this kind of form, this could potentially, as you talked about, have some title ramifications, especially if Everton can come away with all 3 points. What are you looking for as keys, and what do you think this game means for the rest of the season for both of these bitter rivals?
Oh man, so we've not had much to celebrate in the derby for so long, right? So, from a personal perspective, I want to see Everton go out and play like we've played the last 4 games or the last 7 games, if you look at all the games we've played, right? I just want to see us sustain that level of play, continue to get the chances, create the chances, and then continue to score them. And, who knows what might happen, right? It might be a 5-4 shootout, or we might win 4-0, which either could happen. Or once again, we could lose. I think what's frustrating for the Everton fan base is whenever we have the derby, whether it's at Anfield or whether it's in Goodison, it's always been we either seem to lose our heads or just blatant chances that you would score 99 out of 100 times. That 100th time happens against Liverpool, right? So I'm just really tired of that. So all I want to see is just the level of play that we've been putting out on the field for the last few weeks. If we can play like that at Liverpool, anything can happen. So just want to see that again.
Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking the time. Pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And thanks again to Kelvin for taking the time to talk to us on Touchline Talk. Really enjoyed that conversation. That Merseyside derby is going to be absolutely fascinating. Cannot wait. It's really unfortunate it comes right after the international break where you've got this gap in between. Just builds the excitement for it, though. Really looking forward to that game. Again, you can read all of the content everybody over at Royal Blue Mersey is producing at royalbluemersey.sbnation.com. Be sure to check that out. We're going to take another break. When we come back, just because there isn't club competitions doesn't mean there's not soccer, so we're going to take a look at what's next. European playoff Euro qualifiers today, as well as Major League Soccer action and Nations League action coming up this weekend. You're watching Touchline Talk. Don't go anywhere.